Welcome back to the deep dive. It is quiet in the studio today. Suspiciously quiet.
It is, isn't it? A little too quiet.
And if you were listening to this at home, there is a decent chance you are being watched right now.
Oh, definitely.
Maybe from the top of a bookshelf, maybe from under the sofa. You might see a pair of eyes that look, affectionate 1 minute, and then, quite frankly, look like they are calculating exactly how to take you down the next.
That is the quintessential experience, isn't it? The stare. It pierces right through you.
It is the stare. We are talking, of course, about the domestic cat, and we have this massive stack of research on the desk today, anchored by the Cat Encyclopedia.
It's a heavy one.
It is.
Mm-hmm.
And I have to say, going into this, I thought I knew cats. I grew up with them. I've seen the memes. They are, the internet's favorite animal, the ruler of the living room.
Sure, we all think we know them.
But the mission today is to really shatter that familiarity. We are looking at an animal that is a biological masterpiece, a religious icon of victims of genocide, and a global conqueror.
Mm-hmm.
It's a lot.
It is a wild ride. And you are right about the familiarity breeding, well, not contempt, but complacency. We see Fluffy on the rug and we forget what we are actually looking at.
Exactly.
The core argument of the source material, I think, is that the cat is a biological marvel that hasn't really changed much in millions of years. It's a piece of evolutionary perfection that just sort of happened to wander into our houses.
That's the apex predator part of our title. And we're going to get into the nuts and bolts of that, the claws, the eyes, the teeth. All of it.
We have to.
But it is also a cultural mirror. If you want to understand human history, our fears, our religions, our trade routes, you can just follow the paw prints.
It's amazing how closely they track with our own history.
We're going to go from the prehistoric jungles of the Cretaceous period to the deck of a Phoenician trading ship, through the temples of ancient Egypt, the bonfires in the Middle Ages, and right up to your modern living room.
It is a trajectory that, frankly, makes the dog's history look a little boring. Sorry, dog lovers.
Good.
But the cat story is one of survival against the odds. It's about navigating human whimsy, from being worshipped as a god to being burned as a demon, and somehow, always, coming out on top.
Exactly. So our mission today is to unpack this encyclopedia and understand the cat, not just as a pet, simply Fluffy who wants dinner, but as this biological marvel.
Yeah.
We're going to look at everything from their deep evolutionary history, how they built the perfect predator, to their role in religion, art, and why they just completely dominate our entertainment.
And I think what's most interesting about this deep dive is that it challenges the assumption that the cat is just a small dog in terms of domestication. The biological blueprint is entirely different, and the social contract they sign with us humans is, well, it's unique.
Unique is a polite way of putting it. I'd say it's more on their terms than ours.
I think that's fair to say.
So, okay, let's unpack this. Let's start at the very beginning. Segment 1, the biological blueprint. What actually is a cat? Because in the source material, it breaks down the family tree, the Felidae, and it's not as simple as big cats and small cats, is it?
No, it's a bit more nuanced than that. If we look at the order Carnivora, cats are the most specialized meat eaters of the entire bunch.
The most specialized.
The most. But let's pause on Carnivora for a second. That is a big umbrella. It includes bears, dogs, weasels, seals, raccoons, a whole lot of animals.
Okay.
But within that group, the cat family Felidae are what we call obligate carnivores.
Obligate carnivores, meaning they don't just like meat, they need it.
They physically cannot survive without it. A dog can scavenge a bit of plant matter, maybe some berries or grains, and get by. A bear is an omnivore, it eats everything. A cat?
No, it's meat or nothing.
It's meat or nothing. They need an amino acid called taurine, which is found almost exclusively in animal flesh. Without it, they go blind and their heart fails. They're the most specialized, high-stakes meat eaters in that entire group. The encyclopedia says they lost the ability to make their own taurine millions of years ago because their diet was so consistently meat-heavy, they just didn't need to synthesize it anymore.
So they burned the bridge behind them, evolutionarily speaking.
They absolutely did. So inside the Felidae family, there's this major split that I found fascinating. We tend to think big cats and small cats based on how big they are.
Right. A lion is a big cat, a tabby is a small cat. Seems simple.
But the source says that is not the scientific dividing line at all.
Okay, so what is it?
No, size is deceptive. You can have a very large small cat and a smaller big cat. The real split, biologically, is between the Pantherini and the Feline.
Pantherini and Feline.
And the distinction is arguably Much cooler than just weight. It comes down to the voice box. The roar versus the purr.
This is the dinner party fact of the episode. I feel like I learned this in school at some point, but completely forgot it. Explain the mechanics here. Why can a lion roar, but my tabby can't?
It is all about the hyoid apparatus. It's a bone structure in the throat.
Okay.
So in the Pantherinae, the lions, tigers, leopards, jaguars, parts of that hyoid structure are not fully bone. They are made of an elastic ligament.
Like a rubber band or something.
In a sense, yeah, that's a good way to think of it. It's flexible. And this flexibility allows the vocal folds to stretch and vibrate in a very specific way that produces those low-frequency, high-intensity sounds.
That terrifying chest-rattling roar that you can hear for miles.
That's the one. But there is a trade-off, and this is the crucial part. Because it's so flexible, they cannot vibrate it continuously while breathing in and out. They cannot purr.
So the king of the jungle cannot purr.
He can make a sort of chuffing sound or a hum on the exhale, but that continuous motor sound that we know and love, impossible for him.
That's amazing.
Now, you flip over to the Feline, the small cats, which includes our house cats, but also the lynx, cougars, and bobcats. Their hyoid bone is completely ossified. It is rigid.
Solid bone.
Yeah.
No flexibility.
Solid bone. This structure allows them to vibrate the air column on both the inhale and the exhale to create that continuous purr.
Ah, so that's the key, the inhale and the exhale.
That's the key. But because it's rigid, it limits their vocal range. They physically cannot roar. They can scream, they can yell, they can make some pretty terrifying noises, but they cannot produce that deep resonant roar.
So you have to choose your superpower. You either get to sound like a chainsaw or a jet engine, but not both.
Exactly. You can have both.
And this is where it gets really interesting for me, the cheetah. We always think of the cheetah as a big cat because, well, it's huge, it's incredibly fast, it hunts on the savanna, but the sources say it's not in the Pantherinae group.
Correct. And this is a common misconception. The cheetah is actually part of the puma lineage.
The puma lineage.
So despite its size, if you look at its anatomy, it purrs. It doesn't roar. It's much more closely related to the cougar or the jaguarundi than it is to a lion or a tiger.
So it's a giant purring machine.
It is. It's a perfect example of how evolutionary traits can be deceptive if you're just looking at body mass or lifestyle. The underlying biology tells a different story.
So if you scratch a cheetah behind the ears, theoretically it purrs just like a tabby. That's wild.
Theoretically, yes. Though I definitely would not recommend testing that theory in the wild.
No, I'll take your word for it.
But biologically, yes, the mechanism is the same.
Now, let's go back even further. We're talking about the ancestor of all of these cats, both the roarers and the purrers. The source mentions a creature called Semilestes. This does not sound like a cat at all.
It definitely didn't look like one. We are going way back to the late Cretaceous period, maybe 65 million years ago. The dinosaurs are on their way out. Mammals are just, trying not to get stepped on.
Right.
Semilestes was an insect eater. It looked more like a tree shrew or maybe a weasel, but it had one crucial feature that set the stage for everything that was to come.
And what was that?
The teeth.
The teeth, of course.
Yes. Evolution is so often driven by diet. Semilestes began to develop these cheek teeth that were laterally flattened. They were compressed side to side.
So not for grinding.
Exactly. Instead of having grinding surfaces like we have for chewing plants, think of a cow chewing cud or us chewing a salad. These teeth acted like scissors. They sheared. This is the development of what are called the carnassial teeth.
The carnassials, okay.
And that's the signature of a true carnivore.
So the transition from a little shrew-like bug eater to a lion starts with a pair of scissors in the mouth.
Essentially, yes. This one adaptation allowed them to shift from crunching insects to slicing through flesh. From there, you get the miacids, which were these early carnivores, and then eventually a creature called Proailurus, which means before cats.
Proailurus.
That was about 34 million years ago. It was roughly the size of a domestic cat, probably lived in trees. It was a generalist. And then came Pseudolurus, which the encyclopedia calls the first true cat. And this is where the family tree really starts to branch out into all the forms we know today.
Speaking of branching out, we have to address the elephant or the tiger in the room. The saber-toothed cat. Smilodon.
Yes, Smilodon.
When I see pictures of prehistoric cats, that's always the one. The big fangs, the powerful build. But the encyclopedia is pretty emphatic that this is not our cat's grandfather.
No, and that's a very, very important distinction to make. Smilodon, the saber-toothed cat, represents a completely separate branch of the cat family called the Machaerodontinae.
Machaerodontinae.
They were cousins, perhaps, but they were not ancestors. They went extinct about 10,000 years ago during the last ice age. They didn't leave any descendants at all.
They were a dead end.
A spectacular dead end,
Yeah.
but a dead end nonetheless. I mean, look at the biology that's described in the text. To use those 6-inch canine teeth, Smilodon had to be able to open its jaw 120 degrees.
120 degrees. That's like,
Oh,
that's unhinging your face. I can barely do 45.
practically. But they were hyper-specialized for hunting massive, slow-moving prey, like mammoths and mastodons. They were ambush predators who would use those teeth not for a killing bite to the neck, but to slash the soft underbelly and cause the animal to bleed out.
A completely different hunting strategy.
Completely different. But being that specialized is incredibly risky. When the climate changed and the megafauna died out, the saber-tooths couldn't adapt. They were too specialized. They weren't fast enough to catch smaller, quicker prey like deer. They were too bulky. They were built for power, not speed.
So nature selected for agility over brute force in the end.
Exactly. Meanwhile, the ancestors of our modern cats were smaller, faster, and much more adaptable. They could eat a mouse, a bird, a rabbit. They survived. And that leads us to the modern lineage. The text says there are 37 species of cat today, and they diversified really, really fast, right?
Extremely fast in geological terms. In the last 10 million years, we saw an explosion of speciation. It's incredible.
Yeah. We have 7 main lineages: the ocelot line, the puma line, the lynx line, and so on. But despite this huge variety, from a tiger in Siberia to a sand cat in the Sahara Desert, the basic cat blueprint is remarkably consistent.
That's the perfect hunter idea you mentioned earlier. Nature found a design that worked and just stuck with it.
Pretty much. Let's run down the checklist. First, retractile claws. Why is that so important?
Well, dogs have claws, but they're always out. They get worn down.
Right. A dog's claws are like cleats. They help with traction when they run, but they get dull from constantly walking on the ground. A cat's claws are sheathed. They are protected in a little fold of skin when they're not in use.
They're always sharp.
That means when they do pop them out, they are needle sharp. They are pristine weapons for climbing and for holding onto prey.
And the hearing. The text says they have hearing so acute they can pinpoint a rodent's rustle in high grass.
Unbelievable hearing. They can hear frequencies far higher than dogs and even higher than we can imagine. They're specifically tuned to detect the ultrasonic squeaks of rodents.
Ultrasonic.
And their ears can rotate 180 degrees independently of each other. They are like radar dishes. A cat can be sound asleep on the couch, and you'll see one ear just swivel toward a sound while the rest of the cat is dead to the world.
I've seen that. It's spooky. And the eyes. We have to talk about the night vision.
The tapetum lucidum.
The what now?
Tapetum lucidum. It's a reflective layer of tissue right behind the retina. It acts like a mirror. So when light enters the eye, it hits the retina. If it misses a photoreceptor, it hits this mirror, bounces back, and hits the retina again.
So it gets a second chance to see the light.
It gives the eye a second chance to catch every single photon. That's why their eyes glow green or gold in photos when you use a flash. It's the light bouncing off that layer. It means they can see in about 1/6 the light that we need to see.
So when my cat is zooming around the house at 3 a.m. for no reason, for him it's practically daylight. He's navigating a brightly lit obstacle course.
And he's armed with sensory input we can't even imagine. He's got whiskers that can detect changes in air currents. He's got a sense of smell that's 14 times better than ours. He is a high-performance machine.
Which explains why my 10-pound cat thinks he can take down a gazelle, even if it's just a feather on a string.
That's the software. It's hardwired.
Okay, so we have this biological machine, perfected over millions of years. But how did it end up on my sofa? This brings us to segment 2. The domestication story. And I love the title the outline gives this, A Mutual Agreement.
That is the perfect way to describe it, because unlike dogs who we actively bred to hunt or herd, or horses who we broke to ride, we didn't really do anything to cats. They kind of did it themselves.
First, we need to identify the suspect. Which wildcat is the actual ancestor of Mr. Whiskers?
Genetic analysis points very, very clearly to one specific subspecies, Felis sylvestris libica, the African wildcat.
The African wildcat.
If you look at a picture of one in the wild today, it is almost indistinguishable from a modern domestic tabby cat. It has the same stripes, the same build, the same size. If you saw one walking down the street, you'd probably try to call it over.
And for a long time, the history books said this all happened in ancient Egypt, maybe 4,000 years ago. That was the accepted wisdom.
For decades, yeah. That's what everyone thought. Egypt, cats, mummies, it all seemed to fit.
But there's been a plot twist, hasn't there?
A major plot twist. This is where the archaeology gets really exciting. In the early 2000s, there was a discovery on the island of Cyprus.
Okay, Cyprus.
Archaeologists found a grave dated to 7500 BCE. That's 9,500 years ago. Long before the pyramids, long before the Sphinx. It pushed the timeline back by thousands of years.
7500 BCE. That's ancient.
And inside this grave, buried right next to a human, was a cat. An 8-month-old cat carefully interred with seashells and other grave goods. Now here is the kicker. Cats are not native to the island of Cyprus.
Ah, so it had to be brought there. By a person?
By a person.
On a boat. Exactly. That implies that 9,500 years ago, humans cared enough about this animal to put it on a boat, cross the Mediterranean, and then bury it with ceremony when it died. You don't do that with livestock. You don't do that with a wild animal you just caught. That implies a real relationship.
That is incredible. It totally changes the story. So if it wasn't the Egyptians who started it, how did it happen? The text talks about the granary theory.
Right. And this ties in perfectly with the new timeline. Around 10,000 years ago is when humans started the agricultural revolution in the Fertile Crescent.
We stopped being hunter-gatherers.
We stopped wandering and started farming. We started settling down. And crucially, we started storing grain in silos and granaries. Now, what does a huge pile of grain attract?
Rodents. Lots and lots of them. A buffet for rats and mice.
Exactly. An absolute explosion of the rodent population. And what do mice and rats attract?
The local wildcats. The local wildcats. The African wildcat is a solitary nocturnal hunter. It saw these new human settlements not as a threat, but as an unbelievable opportunity. A high density of prey concentrated in a very small area.
So the cats moved in because the food was there. It was a business decision.
It was. And the farmers, seeing that these cats were killing the pests that were eating their winter food supply, presumably said, hey, you know what? Don't chase that one away, let it stay. It was a symbiotic relationship. The cats got a reliable food source and shelter. The humans got free, efficient pest control.
And this is what I meant by selected themselves. We didn't grab a wildcat and put a leash on it. The cats that were slightly bolder, slightly less aggressive toward humans were the ones that thrived near the barns.
Precisely.
They bred with each other, and over generations they became more and more tolerant of our presence.
It's a process called commensalism. They adapted to our environment because it benefited them. We didn't force them, we just created an attractive niche and they moved in. And to prove how unique this is, you can look at the failures. The source material mentions that humans have tried to domesticate other cats, specifically the cheetah.
Yeah, I read that. Emperor Akbar of India had, what, 1,000 cheetahs?
He did, 1,000. And the ancient Egyptians and the Assyrians also kept them for hunting. They're relatively docile compared to a lion. You can tame an individual cheetah.
But you can't domesticate the species.
You can't. And the reason is they don't breed well in captivity. Their courtship ritual is incredibly complex. They need huge amounts of space. In the wild, a male cheetah might chase a female for miles over several days. You can't replicate that in a palace garden.
So every tame cheetah had to be captured from the wild as a cub.
Correct. You couldn't create a self-sustaining lineage of tame cheetahs. The domestic cat, however, was happy to breed in the barn, under the porch, in a cardboard box in the kitchen. It adapted to our space.
So the cheetah failed the job interview because it was too high maintenance. But the African wildcat got the permanent contract.
In a manner of speaking, yes, it was the right cat for the job.
So now we have cats living with us. But they didn't just stay in the Fertile Crescent. They went global. Which brings us to segment 3, world travelers. I love the image of the cat as a world citizen.
It's a great title for it. And again, they didn't walk, they hitched a ride. The key drivers here were the Phoenicians.
The Phoenicians.
These were the great sea traders of the Mediterranean about 2,500 years ago. They were moving goods everywhere: Spain, Italy, North Africa. And cats were likely brought along either as valuable items to trade or, more likely, to keep the ship's rats from eating the cargo and chewing through the ropes.
Smuggled or traded. I like the idea of a Phoenician sailor sneaking a precious cat on board.
Yeah.
And then the Romans took it from there.
The Romans were huge fans of the cat. They saw them as symbols of liberty, actually. But yeah, they spread them all over the empire. The Roman army took them on their campaigns. At the same time, the Silk Road was carrying cats east into Asia. So you have this two-pronged expansion.
East and west.
Exactly. By the time the Roman Empire fell, cats were established as far north as Britain.
And then came the Age of Discovery. Columbus and all that.
Yes. The 15th century and onwards, ships sailing to the Americas, ships sailing to Australia later on with convicts and colonists. The cat was an absolutely essential piece of equipment for a long sea voyage.
Not a pet, but equipment.
You have to protect the ship's biscuit and the flour from rats. If the rats eat your food in the middle of the Atlantic, you die. It's that simple. A good ship's cat was worth its weight in gold.
There's a specific cat mentioned in the text, Stripey, more modern example.
Yes. On the HMS Warspite in the 1940s during World War II, one of the last official naval cats. There's a famous photo of him sitting in the life ring. It was a tradition that lasted for centuries until modern hygiene and quarantine laws finally ended it in most navies. But by then, the job was done. The cat was everywhere.
But there's a flip side to this global expansion, isn't there? Not every cat ends up on a rug by the fire. We have to talk about the feral reality. The source material is pretty blunt about this. Feral cats aren't just outdoor pets.
No, and the definition is important. A stray cat is a pet that's lost or abandoned. A feral cat is of domestic descent, but it has reverted to a wild state. It has no contact with humans, or at least no positive bond. It sees us as a threat.
And their social structure is fascinatingly different from a house cat.
It is. Domestic house cats are often solitary or have, tense roommate situations. But feral cats, they form colonies.
And they're matriarchal, which I thought was amazing.
Almost exclusively. The colony forms around a reliable food source, a dumpster behind a restaurant, a fishing harbor. And it's run by related females. The queens. They co-parent. They will nurse each other's kittens. They will guard the colony together from strange cats or predators. The males, the toms, are usually on the periphery. They come and go, fighting for dominance and mating rights, but the core of the colony is female.
It sounds kind of empowering until you read about the life expectancy.
That's the grim reality. A well-cared-for house cat can live into its late teens, maybe even its early 20s. A feral cat, the average lifespan is 3 to 4 years.
That's it.
That's it. Disease, traffic, fighting, malnutrition, predators. It is a very, very hard life.
And they also cause problems for the environment. The source brings up the environmental impact.
Yeah.
Mentions the kakapo in New Zealand.
This is a critical point in the source. When cats were introduced to islands where there were no natural ground predators, the results were devastating. The kakapo is a large, flightless, ground-nesting parrot.
Flightless parrot.
It evolved for millions of years without any mammalian predators. It had no defense. When cats arrived on ships, the kakapo was just an easy meal. It was hunted to the brink of extinction.
That's just one example.
One of many. This is why the debate between trap-neuter return programs and outright eradication is so heated in conservation circles.
Right.
Cats are beloved pets, but they are also incredibly efficient apex predators that can wipe out entire populations of indigenous wildlife. It's a complex ethical issue that we created.
And that duality, love and fear, predator and pet, seems to be a theme throughout human history. Which leads us perfectly to segment 4, saints, sinners, and gods.
This is where we see the cat as a cultural mirror. How we treat cats often says more about us than it does about them.
We have to start with Egypt. I mean, you can't talk about cat history without talking about Bastet.
The cult of Bastet, it really peaked around 1500 BCE. Originally, Bastet was a lion goddess, Sekhmet, fierce and warlike, a goddess of destruction. But as cats became more integrated into the home, she softened. Her image transformed into the cat-headed woman, Bastet, a goddess of fertility, home, music, dance, and protection.
And the reverence was intense. The sources say that killing a cat, even accidentally, was a capital crime.
It was. The historian Herodotus wrote that if a house cat died of natural causes, the family would shave their eyebrows as a sign of deep mourning. They would mummify the cat with as much care as a human family member.
But, and here's the paradox that the source highlights, this reverence created a really dark industry.
It's a very strange contradiction.
The sacrificial temples.
Yes. Archaeological digs at temple sites like Bubastis have found these vast cat cemeteries with hundreds of thousands of mummified cats, millions even. And when they x-ray these mummies, they find that many of them were very young, just kittens really, with their necks deliberately broken.
So they were breeding them just to kill them, to sell as offerings.
It was an industrial-scale breeding operation. You, as a pilgrim, would go to the temple, buy a mummy like buying a votive candle in a church today, and offer it to the goddess Bastet to gain her favor. The priests bred them, killed them, mummified them, and sold them. It was a massive economy.
Wow. So they worshiped the idea of the cat, the divine cat, but the individual animal was often just a commodity.
A disposable commodity.
Yeah.
It's horrifyingly pragmatic. It's the commodification of the divine.
It is. But then we move to Europe in the Middle Ages, and things go from sacrificial commodity to agent of pure evil. The pendulum just swings completely.
Completely to the other side. As Christianity spread across Europe, it sought to stamp out any lingering pagan symbols and beliefs. The cat, with its strong links to female goddesses like Bastet in Egypt or Freya in Norse mythology, became deeply suspect.
This is the era of the witch's familiar, the classic black cat on the broomstick.
Exactly. The independent, nocturnal, stealthy nature of the cat just did not sit well with medieval Christian mindset. They were linked to the devil. The belief was that a witch could shapeshift into a cat 9 times, or that the black cat was a demon, a spy, given to the witch by the devil himself.
And the Vatican got involved.
Pope Gregory IX issued a papal bull in the 1230s, the Vox in Rama, that explicitly linked black cats to satanic rituals and devil worship. It was basically an official declaration of war on cats.
And the consequences were brutal.
Unbelievably brutal. Torture, burning, cats were gathered up and thrown onto bonfires during festivals. It was a centuries-long persecution. It's a genuine miracle they survived in Europe at all.
And the irony is just staggering.
The supreme irony is that by killing the cats, they allowed the rat populations to explode, which almost certainly contributed to the devastating spread of the Black Death.
Talk about shooting yourself in the foot. Was there anyone standing up for them at all?
A few. There's St. Gertrude of Nivelles. She's the patron saint of cats, and also gardeners, strangely enough.
An odd combination.
She was an abbess whose monastery was said to be miraculously free of mice, so she is often depicted with a cat at her feet. But she was the exception, not the rule. For centuries, the cat was public enemy number 1 in much of Christendom.
Meanwhile, in other parts of the world, the vibe was totally different. In Islam, for example.
Much, much different. In Islamic culture, the cat is highly respected for its cleanliness. There are many legends about the Prophet Muhammad's love for cats. One of the most famous stories is about his favorite cat, Muessa.
I love that story. Tell it.
The Prophet was preparing for prayer, and Muessa was sleeping on the sleeve of his robe. Rather than wake the cat, he took a knife and cut off the sleeve of his expensive robe, leaving the cat to sleep in peace. It set this incredible precedent of compassion.
That's beautiful.
As a result, cats are allowed in mosques. They are considered ritually clean animals, whereas dogs are often not.
And the M on the forehead of tabby cats, there are competing stories there.
There are. In Christian folklore, some say the M on the tabby's forehead stands for Mary because a cat jumped into the manger to warm the baby Jesus with its purring, and Mary blessed it. But in Islamic tradition, the M is a mark left by the Prophet Muhammad's hand when he rested it on the head of a cat.
It just shows how the same physical trait can be interpreted through totally different religious lenses.
Exactly. And in Buddhism.
Also a positive view, I take it.
Also very positive. Cats are often seen as temple guardians, keeping the sacred scrolls safe from mice. There is a belief in some traditions that the souls of the spiritually advanced enter the body of a cat for their final life before moving on to nirvana. It's a place of honor.
And we can't forget the Norse myths. Freya's chariot.
Right. The goddess of love, beauty, and war. Her chariot wasn't pulled by horses, it was pulled by 2 large gray cats. The source connects these to the Norwegian forest. Big, fluffy, sturdy cats that could believably pull a goddess's chariot in a myth.
I want a chariot pulled by cats. That sounds inefficient, but incredibly majestic.
The height of style.
Okay, so we've covered gods and devils. But what of the stuff that isn't quite religion, but everyone knows? Segment 5. Superstition, folklore, and literature. The stories we tell.
The cultural software.
Let's start with the big one. Black cats. I feel like this is the most divisive topic.
Yeah.
Are they lucky or unlucky?
It totally depends on your zip code. In the U.S. and parts of Europe, because of that witch association we just discussed, they are often seen as unlucky. If a black cat crosses your path, it's an omen of doom. It's why they're the hardest to get adopted from shelters.
That's so sad.
It is. But in Britain, in some parts, giving a black cat to a bride is considered good luck for the marriage. And in Japan, extremely lucky. They're seen as good fortune.
Japan has the maneki neko, right? The little waving cat statue.
Beckoning cat. You see them in the windows of shops and restaurants everywhere. The legend is that a feudal lord was standing under a tree during a thunderstorm. He saw a cat in the doorway of a poor temple, and it looked like it was beckoning to him with its paw. He thought that was strange, so he walked over to the cat to investigate. Moments later, lightning struck the tree he had been standing under, completely destroying it. The cat had saved his life.
Wow.
So the raised paw is a gesture that invites good fortune and protection into a place.
Sailors were also super superstitious about cats, right?
Oh, incredibly. They were living walking barometers. If a cat sneezed, it meant rain was coming. If it washed behind its ears, a storm was on the way. And Japanese sailors believed that tortoiseshell cats specifically could predict storms and protect the ship from ghosts.
There's actually some science to that, isn't there?
There might be. Cats are very sensitive to changes in atmospheric and barometric pressure in their inner ears, so they might genuinely act differently or feel uncomfortable right before a storm hits.
And the 9 lives thing, where does that come from?
It's surprisingly old. Shakespeare references it in Romeo, and Juliet Mercutio calls Tybalt the king of cats and says he wants one of his 9 lives, but the idea likely comes from their incredible writing reflex.
Their ability to always land on their feet.
Their amazing ability to twist their spine in midair and land on their feet makes them seem almost invincible. They can survive falls from incredible heights that would kill any other animal of their size, so it's easy to see why people would think they have multiple lives to spare.
Now, origin stories. I laughed out loud at the Noah's Ark one in the text. It's ridiculous.
It is a classic piece of folklore. The story goes that the Ark was getting completely overrun with rats because, well, you have 2 of every animal on a boat, including rats. Noah asked God for help.
What did God say?
God told Noah to tickle the lion's nose. The lion let out a massive sneeze, and out popped a pair of domestic cats.
Just sneezed out a mini lion. Problem solved.
Problem solved. And then there's the Manx cat, the breed from the Isle of Man that has no tail. The folklore says it was the very last animal to board the Ark, and Noah slammed the door on its tail by accident.
Poor cat. And the Siamese. The crossed eyes and the kinked tail.
That's a lovely fable. The story is that a Siamese cat was tasked with guarding a sacred golden goblet in a temple. She stared at it so intently for so long that her eyes permanently crossed, and she wrapped her tail around the stem for safekeeping so tightly that it developed a permanent kink.
It turns what is actually a genetic defect into a badge of honor and duty.
Exactly. It's a much better story.
It's amazing how we create these narratives. Moving on to the more formal literature, the cat seems to have a very specific role. They're usually tricksters or enigmas.
Absolutely. They're rarely just simple, loyal companions like dogs are in literature. Look at the Cheshire Cat in Alice in Wonderland. The grin, the disappearing act. It's unsettling, it's mysterious, it's not good or bad, it just is. It speaks in riddles.
Or Puss in Boots. He's the ultimate trickster.
The ultimate trickster who uses his wits and cunning to get his poor master a fortune and a princess. And then you have the Cat in the Hat. Total chaos.
The Lord of Misrule. He comes in, wrecks the house, balances a fishbowl on a rake, but he makes it fun. It captures that dual nature of the cat, destructive but impossibly charming.
You can't stay mad at him. And for a much darker, more adult turn, Mikhail Bulgakov's The Master and Margarita has Behemoth.
A gunslinging demon cat. I feel like I need to read that book immediately.
It is quite a trip. He's a member of the Devil's Entourage. He's a gigantic black cat who walks on 2 legs, drinks vodka, plays chess, and is incredibly sarcastic. He represents the sheer absurdity of the Soviet bureaucracy the book is satirizing.
That's incredible. Okay, let's wrap with segment 6, art and entertainment. The visual legacy. You mentioned earlier that Renaissance artists seemed to have no idea what a cat actually looked like.
It's true. If you look at many medieval or early Renaissance paintings, the cats look stiff. They look like small, furry humans or some kind of weird weasel. Da Vinci did some amazing sketches of their movement, but he was an exception. Generally, Western art really struggled to capture the catness of a cat.
Why do you think that is?
Partly because they were often just minor details, symbols of sin or lust or domesticity in the background of a larger scene. They weren't the main subject, they were metaphors.
But Eastern art was different.
Oh, completely. If you look at Eastern art, Japanese woodblock prints, for example, they nailed it centuries earlier.
The source mentions this superiority.
Japanese artists like Utagawa Kuniyoshi in the 19th century they got it.
Wow.
They captured the fluidity, the character, the personality, the way a cat curls up or stretches. They observed them as beings in their own right, not just as symbols.
So when did the West finally catch up?
Really in the 18th and 19th centuries with the rise of the pet portrait as a genre. But for me, it was the modernists who really got it. Manet's Olympia, the black cat at the foot of the bed, is a symbol of illicit sexuality and scandal. It was shocking at the time.
And Steinlen's famous Le Chat Noir poster?
Oh, the one with the black cat on the red background. You see that on t-shirts and posters everywhere, even today.
That's the one.
That was an advertisement for a bohemian cabaret in Montmartre in Paris. It perfectly captured the artistic, independent, slightly dangerous allure of the cat. The cat as the artist, the outsider. And then you have Andy Warhol, of course, with his pop art cats.
Who are all named Sam.
All 25 of them were named Sam.
And finally, entertainment. Film and cartoons. The text makes a really good point. Cats don't act. They just exist.
No, they don't. Dogs act. A dog looks at the trainer, it wants to please, it will hit the mark. A cat, you just have to put the camera on it and hope it does something interesting. In Breakfast at Tiffany's, the cat Orangey is just being a cat, but it works perfectly as a symbol of Holly Golightly's own drifter lifestyle. She refuses to give him a proper name because she refuses to own him or be tied down.
And the villain trope. Every evil genius needs a cat.
Blofeld in the James Bond movies, the white Persian, it's a stroke of genius. The villain is calmly stroking this beautiful, silent, predatory animal while planning world domination. It implies he is dangerous but also sophisticated and in control.
It became such a trope that Austin Powers had to parody it with Dr. Evil and Mr. Bigglesworth.
Who loses all his hair when he gets cryogenically frozen.
Exactly.
It's the perfect parody.
And cartoons. Tom and Jerry. Sylvester and Tweety.
The eternal struggle. The cat is always the chaser, always the butt of the joke, but always resilient. He always comes back for more. But Felix the cat was the first real cartoon superstar in the 1920s. He paved the way for Mickey Mouse.
So what does this all mean? We've gone from Similestes the tree shrew to the Temple of Bastet, through the fires of the Middle Ages, and now to internet cat videos.
I think it shows that the cat is the ultimate survivor. They adapted to nature's changes, they adapted to human agriculture, and they adapted to our constantly changing cultures. They went from god to demon to meme, and they just kept purring through it all.
Here's a final provocative thought for you to chew on. The source material mentions that modern breeding is starting to return to wildcat templates. We're seeing breeds like the Bengal or the Savannah that are bred to look like leopards or servals.
It is an interesting circle, isn't it? We spent thousands of years domesticating them, inviting them out of the wild and into our homes, and now we're spending thousands of dollars to make them look wild again.
Are we trying to bring a piece of the jungle back into our living rooms? We want the aesthetic of the apex predator, but safely on the sofa.
That's a great way to put it.
And considering the granary theory, that they moved in on their own terms for their own benefit, I have to ask the final question. Who actually domesticated whom?
I think every cat owner knows the answer to that. We feed them, we clean up after them, we provide shelter.
We are definitely the staff.
We are the staff. We just work here.
So next time you look at your cat, maybe give him a little extra respect. There is 60 million years of evolutionary perfection and a whole lot of human history hiding behind those eyes. Thanks for listening to The Deep Dive.
See you next time.